not to do that? All right, October 3rd. We'll see you then. Thank you. And juror 5. Keep going all the way down to about the second chair. One more.
Second chair.
It serves the best for the acoustics in here.
I just thought it said second mic. So I was checking.
Same thing.
All the same, right?
Yeah.
Well, but second can be here or it can be there.
Perspective, right?
Go ahead, Mr. Bourne.
All right. Thank you, Judge. All right. Juror number 5. I believe we have you back for just one topic. There was a question asked if you've heard about this case somehow in either the media, through a third party, other people, things of that nature. So just starting off, just tell us what you know about the case and kind of where you've heard it, just kind of as a starting point, and then we'll follow up with some more questions.
I really don't know where I heard about it initially, but it was right after it had happened.
Mhm.
Probably still even in the breaking news stage.
Mhm.
I do watch nightly national news, nightly local news.
Mhm.
I'm on Facebook multiple times per day.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of a news junkie that way. And then, of course, because it wasn't in an area where I know people, there are connections. I was familiar with the church that was listed for them, obviously with the area in which it happened. At the time when it was happening, I did read several articles about the ongoing investigation.
Okay. In reading those articles back, and let's just start with back then, when it first happened. What do you remember hearing? What details do you? And this will make sense eventually. But what details specifically do you remember hearing about the case?
I do remember that it was that he had driven to work. They left the baby in a car. I do know that there was some speculation that he had left his desk multiple times during the day, but had not yet discovered the baby at that point. That there was some inappropriate internet activity or some questionable activity that was happening during the day as well. That's the only part I remember specifically at that moment.
Okay. As far as the internet activity, what type of like searches or communications with other people, or do you remember exactly what it was?
At the time, I remember it just being about the effects of what happens when you leave a baby in the car. That there were searches for that information, or looking for articles about how that happens, or what happens exactly that causes death, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And is your memory crystal clear about exactly what you heard or read, or is this something you're just recalling as best you can from what you heard initially?
I'm just recalling as best I can. I mean, like I said, I read it at the time, but
Okay.
I didn't specifically follow it after that unless I just happened to run across it.
Okay. All right. Do you remember anything? Anything about where the defendant was working at the time, or anything of that nature? The locations involved?
Other than that it was down in that area where I had worked before, no, I don't remember anything specifically about that.
Okay.
The only location thing that stuck out to me was the Stonebridge Church, because my brother and sister-in-law had attended there before.
Okay. Now, your brother and sister-in-law, do they still live in Cobb County?
They do.
Okay. Do you know if they still attend church there?
I think they do. I think that church is relocated to the Merriam Square,
Mhm.
and if that's the same church, then yes, they still attend.
Okay. All right. And they were not any of the names of possible witnesses we read out that list
No.
earlier? Okay. Have you spoken with them about that case, or have they talked to you about the case?
The only conversation we have had about it has been from my brother-in-law specifically, who told me several weeks ago, actually, that Mr. Rodriguez was a student of his, and that he thinks he currently has your daughter in class.
You know, I think he's probably getting mixed up with another friend of mine whose daughter has the same, a very similar name.
That's possible. He
Yes.
said he wasn't sure, but
Okay.
That's what he told me.
I think I understand what he's talking about, though. Okay. Has he ever said anything about their opinions about the case or the defendant or anything about the defendant specifically? Have they shared anything about that?
All he said to me at the time was that they and the Harrises were not friends when that connection was first made. But no, other than that, I don't remember any opinions or even having discussed it, actually.
All right. Kind of funny, 6 degrees of separation. Who would have thunk it, right?
Well, you all may know after you've been down here a couple of months that everybody around here is from Atlanta. So
Yes. I went to Georgia Southern, and when I got down here, half of the tags were Cobb County.
You're from here or you're from Atlanta. There's not a whole lot in between. I'm kind of a
Right.
weirdo that way.
Right.
Little interloper. I spent my time in Atlanta.
Yeah. Okay. Aside from that, what you heard just originally, I guess, through the news and things like that, have you heard anything over the past 2 years, kind of leading up to coming to the courthouse? Have you read anything, either in local papers or on the internet, YouTube, or any type of internet sites regarding this case or the facts?
I don't remember reading anything additional about this specific case. No.
Okay. Okay, having a little bit more than a lot of people here as far as connection to Cobb County. Just to follow up, just to make sure we're on steady ground here. If you're asked to sit as a juror, you come in here with, everybody has experiences and things. Some people more, targeted than others or more specific than others. The question is, as a juror, you would have to sit in here and deliver a verdict if you are selected as a juror based only on the evidence in here and the law that the judge gives you, not on things you've heard or relationships you have or things like that. Would you have any concern in that regard if you were selected as a juror, as being able to render a verdict based only the evidence in the law and not the relationships and things you've heard in the media or from other people?
No, actually, quite the contrary. I think one of the things I typically frustrate people with is that I do try to see both sides before I make an argument. That's a fun debate, I guess.
I think we've gathered that from talking to you so far. So, all right. So I just want to make sure the record's clear. So you do believe that you'd be able to put it aside and be fair and impartial to both sides, correct?
I do believe I can.
Okay. All right. I think that's all I have, Judge. Thank you.
You want to serve on this jury? I know want is probably a strong word, but I think it's a fair question.
I think it's a fair question. I think from the point of civic duty, I feel a responsibility to be honest and forthright and not to intentionally remove myself from something.
Right?
Sorry, it made me emotional. I didn't know that it would. This, however, is a difficult case. I recognize that. And then from a very personal standpoint, I am self-employed. Serving on something of this magnitude with this amount of time would cause a great deal of hardship for us. We are not in a situation where we live off my husband's salary. We live off both our salaries. And I don't get paid if I don't go to work. So in that note, I'd much rather have been able to serve on something that took a day or two.
Right.
And be done. Looking at something this long is a little daunting to me, especially knowing that it comes with weight and gravitas and that kind of thing. So I don't know if I can answer a yes or a no. Do I want to?
Well, you have you've answered a lot of questions, and you've answered them in a way that I think it's clear to both parties that you are attempting to provide us with sufficient information to make a decision whether or not you're going to be a right juror for this case.
Sure.
So to that extent, we appreciate it. That's the function of what we're doing here. You've had some exposure through the media. It's clear to us you are a person who reads a lot of news, who follows the news and gets it from different sources. As we've been in here these last 2 or 3 days, have you started to remember more of things perhaps that you have read over the last 2 years or seen?
Not really about this specific case. I did, even though I avoided specific things about about this when I went home at lunch. I did scroll back through my Facebook history to look for the name of the article you had asked me about.
Okay.
Which was actually an old article. It was called Fatal Distraction. It was in the Washington Post.
Right.
I didn't even realize at the time, I read it back in May, according to my timeline activity log or whatever that is. I did not realize at the time that it was from 2009. I saw that today in the byline when I looked at it. I have read other articles similar to that, kind of addressing both sides of this issue.
Yeah.
In terms of how or why that happens, but I don't know. I don't remember that there has been anything specific about this one.
I want to make I want to make something real clear here about your last answer. Obviously, the court has given very specific instructions not to go look anything up. If I understand what you're saying, that's not what you did. What you did was look for something that I asked if you remember the name to let me know.
I did.
Okay. You didn't go looking for articles about this case.
I did not.
Okay. Just want to make that clear. All right. Other than that, fatal distraction, were there? You answered a question affirmatively that you, aside from this particular case, you had heard media accounts of other cases where a child had been left or forgotten in a car. Okay. And any of those cases, did you particularly follow, or just simply that you read them and made note of them and are aware?
I think I would just call it awareness.
Yeah.
Of it. I mean, obviously at this point, my children are older.
Right.
I'm not personally worried about whether I'm going to leave a kid in the car.
Mm.
You know, so it's more of a human interest thing to me. How does it happen? I'm also very intrigued sometimes by the way people respond to things. You know, you get people on either side who say, "Oh, that would totally happen to me," or "That would never happen to
Yeah.
me." I find that level of assuredness kind of disingenuous most of the time from both sides of any kind of topic like that. To be able to say never, that would never, or absolutely, I'm that kind of, you know, like I'm that distracted.
Yeah.
So I do tend to read a lot about those kinds of things just to understand how people get so set in one mindset versus another. So sometimes it's about a case like this, sometimes it's about just politics in general. You know, sometimes it's about other human nature oriented things. So
We've asked a lot of things and you've given a lot of answers. But I mean, at the end of the day, if we're looking for individuals who, despite what they're bringing in of their life, can just be fair and impartial to both sides, do you believe you could be that kind of juror for us?
I do believe I could.
Okay. I believe you could too. Thank you.
Further questions?
Oh, no, you're on.
I'm going to excuse you until October 3rd, 9 in the morning, for jury selection. Keep an open mind. Don't discuss this matter with anybody. Although you can tell your husband my son said hello. And you have to absolutely preclude yourself from any exposure to anything to do with this case in any way whatsoever. Media coverage, Facebook, anything that you could imagine to find out about it is absolutely what I want you not to do. And as I say, keep an open mind. No contact with attorneys, parties, or witnesses in the case. Have a pleasant afternoon. We'll see you in several weeks. Let's see, we'll need Juror 5. I'm sorry, Juror 6.
Judge, I think juror 6 has been excused.
Right. But the last juror was Juror 5. Okay. minute. Let me get my notes caught up. So this is juror 7. You can proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon. Long time no see. So, we've just got a couple of questions to talk to you in private. Shouldn't take too long. One thing that you were asked early on was whether everybody was asked, have you heard about this case either from third parties, friends, family, media, something like that? And so we're just going to ask you, to tell us, first of all, generally what do you know about the case, and then where you heard it from, and then we'll ask some follow-up questions, okay?
Okay. Well, I originally heard about it, I think, when it first started happening through Facebook posts, and of course people were just talking about it in general.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know much about it to begin with. I started hearing about the possibility of bringing it down here, and then I started hearing more details about it from people talking about how it included a child, and there was a death of a child from being left in a car and stuff like that. But I really, other than those details, there's not a lot I know about it. I didn't kind of follow it.
Okay. Looking back from, I guess you saw something on Facebook about it initially when it happened, then you've heard some other things. Do you even remember specifically what it was that you heard about the case back when it first may have happened?
When I first heard about it, I really just heard that there was a death of a child because they were left in a car.
Okay.
But it seems like over the last year or so, I've heard of that happening
Mm-hmm.
quite a few times.
Mm-hmm. So maybe it kind of blurs with other cases. This one may be different from other ones you've heard about? Okay. Do you remember any specific, other than, I know you told us that you started hearing about it coming down here and people started talking about it, are there any other details that you think you know about the case, like what was going on that day, anything about the defendant, where he worked, anything about the child? Is there anything that you have heard so far as facts?
Let me see.
Whether it's true or not, because I know those are from other sources, but.
Okay, well, I knew that apparently what had happened was he was going to work and somehow the baby was left in the car and it wasn't discovered until later. I know people were trying to say he did it on purpose. Some people were trying to say it wasn't on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I know later on, right before I got called into jury duty, I started hearing about the text messages or the messages online and stuff like that. That was completely new to me. I didn't hear about that before.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's pretty much it.
Okay. And the things about the text messages and things online, do you remember specifically what it was about the text messages or things online?
Just that there was sexual messages being sent with minors.
Okay. Anything else about anything else online, internet, anything of that nature?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Now, obviously, we ask those questions for a reason. We just want to make sure when you're asked, as I talked about generally, I guess, was that 2 days ago? Yeah, I guess it was 2 days ago, or maybe yesterday, whatever it was. We don't expect jurors to come in here without any knowledge about the world or even having heard of certain things. What we have to determine is if you will be able to, if you're selected as a juror, to any of the stuff that you've heard, whether it's true or not, to be able to put that out of your head and basically, as a juror, render a verdict based solely on the evidence that comes out in this courtroom and applied to the law the judge gives. So asking you, would you be able to do that?
Yes.
Okay. And do you have any opinion whatsoever that's fixed and definite about this case that would keep you from being a juror?
No.
Okay. I think the other one may kind of tie into that, the other question. I think the defense had asked you if you had heard from family or friends about their opinions or things about the case. Have you heard anything from family members or anything of that nature?
Not like specifically. I try not to talk to family and friends about stuff like that just
Mhm.
because it tends to cause a lot of conflict.
Mhm.
And I try not to
So is there anything, do you remember any of your family members saying, oh, I think he's guilty, or I think he's not guilty, or any of that, or talking about any other facts other than what you've told us? Okay. So anything about those conversations with family members that could in any way affect your ability to be fair and impartial? Okay. Just have a second, Judge. That's all I have, Judge. Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Kilgore?
Yes, ma'am. Hey, you've indicated to us that you like to avoid conflict, and you didn't want to talk about these subjects with your family because you wanted to avoid conflict. Do you think if you were on this jury that whatever your opinion was, that you could be strong in the jury room and let your opinion be known, even though there might be, conflict in the jury room? Think you could stand by your opinion? Okay. All right, thank you.
Is that all y'all have?
Yes, Your Honor.
I'm going to excuse you until October 3rd, 9 o'clock, jury assembly room for jury selection. In the meantime, keep an open mind. Do not discuss this matter with others, including other jurors. And don't let anyone speak to you about the case. No contact with anybody involved in this case at all. And you are to create a bubble around yourself so that no information of any sort about this case gets through to you. So no Googling, no Facebook, no anything that you could think of to do. Don't do that. Just make it strictly off limits, okay?
Okay.
Okay. We'll see you October 3rd, 9 a.m. Thank you. We'll see you in a couple weeks. Let's see, I need juror 8.
Okay, thank you.
That's perfect. Good to see you. You can proceed for the stay.
Thank you, Your Honor. All right, Juror 8, welcome back. You just have to follow up on a few issues with you that we talked about. You were asked generally, so now we're just going to follow up. One is when the judge asked, you may remember she asked 3 questions right off the bat. The first of which asked about whether you what would be expected of you is any opinion or thought that you've had or you came in here with, if you formed and expressed it, is that you would be able to, as a juror, put that aside and make a decision in this case based solely upon the evidence that comes out in this courtroom, not what you may have heard outside.
Judge, I'm going to object and ask that we approach.
reporter to get the item.
All right, as I was saying, considering all that, would you be able to put those opinions aside and render a verdict based solely on the evidence in this courtroom and the law that the judge gives you?
Honestly, I don't know that I could.
Okay? Well, explain that to me a little bit.
So it hasn't really come up in that or questioning. I was actually very close to the incident at the time that it occurred. I was still attending the University of Georgia. I did not graduate until May of 2015.
Mm-hmm.
So the entire summer of 2014, I was living in Athens, working in daycare. The entire school year, 2014 to 2015, I student taught in Gwinnett County.
Mm-hmm.
So I spent my mornings listening to Fox 5 News, driving, because there's nothing else on at 5:30 in the
Yes,
morning.
ma'am.
When it starts very early, and I had to commute from Athens every day.
Mhm.
So I received a pretty decent amount of exposure to the incident, to the coverage, a lot more than was exposed down here, because I was not in this region
Right.
of the state at the time. So just, I mean, between hearing so much coverage of it, I mean, talk at school, among the students, among the teachers, things like that, I received a great deal of exposure to this event.
Okay. So when you say you don't know if you'd be able to, let me ask you this: do you have an opinion as to whether he's guilty or not? Have you formed one?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that opinion is it that he is guilty or not?
Oh, you want me to answer that?
Yes. Yes.
Guilty.
Okay. Now, is that opinion that you formed, is that so fixed and definite that you would not be able to put it aside?
I'm gonna object. She's answered that question. I think that's badgering her to make her answer it a second time.
Overruled.
Is it so fixed and definite that you would not be able to put it aside?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. All right. And perhaps maybe we should have asked the question about media exposure first before we got to that one. All right. Thank you, ma'am.
For the defense,
No, ma'am.
I'm going to excuse you. Come back on October the 3rd, 9 a.m. for jury selection. In the meantime, keep an open mind. Don't discuss this matter with anyone or let anyone talk to you about the case. No contact with anyone to do with the case. And no Google, no internet, no Facebook, nothing to do with this case needs to come within 100 miles of you or something similar along those lines. Just stay away from it, okay? We'll see you soon. Thank you. Let's see. Juror 9. Go down just a little bit further, one more. Perfect. There you go.
Ready, Your Honor? Okay.
Yes, I am.
Good afternoon. Okay, ma'am, we just had a few questions to follow up with you in private. A couple of them are in regards to other questions that were asked early on in jury selection. Just wanted to talk to you, everybody we're talking to that answered some of those, talking to individually. One was you were asked a question about whether you had formed and expressed an opinion about the guilt or innocence of the defendant in this case. So kind of with that in mind, I know we also asked some, there was a question about what you've heard in the media and things like that, and so those may interrelate. So first of all, I'm going to ask you, You said you have formed an opinion. Okay. And just for the record, your head's shaking. You're shaking your head? Yes. Okay. And that opinion, if you're asked to be a juror, what you'd be asked to do is you're not asked to just not have any information in the world or anything like that, but to come into this courtroom as a juror, you would have to put any kind of opinion you formed or anything like that aside and render a verdict in this case and make a decision based solely on
I'm gonna
the
object.
evidence.
I'm objecting.
I'm listening.
This is the same type of questioning where essentially he's not asking the question, he is priming the witness by telling them what is going to be expected of them. That is what's called calling on the power of the court. Question hasn't even been asked and he's already explaining, this is what the expectations are. So this is what we expect your answer to be. I think it's wholly inappropriate. I object to it.
All right.
Your Honor, I think the last juror's evidence, the way we ask it is very open-ended and we get whatever answer we get.
You can ask.
Okay. So, as I was saying, you would have to render a verdict based upon only the evidence that comes out in the courtroom and the law the judge gives you, putting aside the other opinion or things you may think you know or know. Would you be able to put aside any prior opinions or anything and render a verdict based on only the evidence you hear and the law that the judge gives you in this case? Okay. So let's talk a little bit further about that, okay? What are the main concerns that you have about, or what are your opinions that would give you this pause?
Well, I've already heard about it when I first started,
Mm-hmm.
2 years ago. And it's just, as a parent, it just really strikes, your nerves and everything. It's just unfathomable to
Mhm.
even something like that. And also with other issues of, underage.
Mhm.
Also, remember, I had children that age.
Mm-hmm.
So that is gonna go through my mind the whole time.
Okay. Okay, so let me ask the follow-up to that. This opinion, is that opinion so fixed and definite that you would not be able to put it aside and render a verdict based solely on the evidence in the law?
Yeah, probably, because I've read so much about it already.
Okay.
I didn't hear the answer.
I've read so much about it already even before I knew about the case.
Thank you.
All right. That's all I have, Judge.
Hey, frankly, I hate to do this to you, but for the record, need to just make it real clear. You've told us you've formed an opinion, and it's fixed and definite. And is that opinion, in fact, that he's guilty? Yes. Thank you.
I'm going to excuse you until October 3rd, 9 o'clock in the morning. Come back for jury selection. Keep an open mind. Don't discuss this with anyone, including fellow jurors. You can walk, but I'm talking. It's okay. I'm laughing. It's when I quit laughing. It's like when a dog quits wagging their tail, you're in trouble. As long as I'm laughing, you're fine. And I'm smiling. Don't discuss this with anyone. Don't let anyone talk to you about it. No contact attorneys, parties, or witnesses. Absolutely no exposure to anything to do with this case. Facebook, Google, media, internet, whatever. Newspapers, TV, radio. Nothing about this case. If you're listening on the radio and it comes on, change your channel. Listen to whatever music you like. Down here, there seems to be a lot of hip-hop, country, and religious. So those things seem to be readily available. And then have a very good afternoon, and we'll see you in October. October 3rd, 9 a.m. Thank you, ma'am. And I wasn't fussing at you.
No, you're
I was fussing near you.
Have a good afternoon.
Yes, ma'am. Juror 10.
Judge, may we put something on the record, or may I make a request before the next juror comes in?
Sure. We'll pull the door to, and we'll wait a second for you to do so. What would that be, please?
Thank you, Judge. Judge, as to those jurors who did answer in the affirmative as to statutory question number 1, we've had a couple on this panel, and the next juror, Juror 10, falls into that category. Rather than the state stand up and prime them and call on the power of the court and tell them what they want the answer to be and then ask the question, we would ask that the court address that with the jurors and call to the jurors' attention that they answer that question in the affirmative and ask what that opinion is. Once that is stated and out there, then we would question.
I don't intend to do that. I've already asked them that. I appreciate that you've asked me, but we're gonna follow the normal protocol. Let's have our next juror.
Ready, Your Honor?
I am.
Thank you.
You don't have to ask.
All right.
You're more than welcome just to go right into it.
Okay. Good afternoon. All right, long time no see. Okay, we just have a couple of issues to talk about that we want to take up individually, mostly from some general questions that were asked early on by the judge. One of the questions she asked was, and I think you raised your hand to this, was have you already formed an opinion regarding, formed and expressed an opinion as to the guilt or innocence of the accused in this case? And I think you raised your hand that you have. Okay. Kind of the follow-up now is to ask you, if you're selected as a juror, you know, whether you come in here, everybody's going to have, you know, people may have heard things about it, whether true or not. People may have opinions. What you would have to do as a juror would be able to set that aside, set what you think you know about it or what opinions you formed aside, and render a verdict just based on, and only based on the evidence in this courtroom and the law that the...
Same objection, Judge.
Same ruling. You can proceed.
Thank you. You would have to render a verdict based solely on the evidence in this courtroom and the law that the judge would give. The question is, now knowing what what it means, would you be able to set those opinions aside and make a determination based solely on the evidence in the that comes out in the courtroom and the law given by the judge?
Yes.
Okay. Now, that opinion that you had formed, was it opinion? What was your opinion?
When I first seen it on the news,
Mm-hmm.
I was against it. Like, I felt, I guess I prejudged.
Okay.
Without seeing any evidence or anything.
Okay.
Because I just felt like, how can somebody do it?
Okay. And having prejudged that, would you be able to put that prejudgment aside and say, you know what, I'm going to sit here and listen to the evidence? Having not heard any evidence or anything like that, would you be able to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. I know you've heard something about the case from either the media, family, something like that, and I know different people have heard about it different ways. Tell me a little bit. How did you hear about the case?
I seen it on Facebook, and then after I seen it, I read through the article on Facebook, and then after I seen it posted on Facebook, I seen it on the news.
Okay. And was this recently, or was this back when it happened a couple years ago? Okay. And if you could just tell us, what were the facts that, as far as you remember back then, what do you remember hearing about the case? What do you think you know about it from the media or wherever, from Facebook?
That he went to work, and he was supposed to, he forgot that he had the baby in the car, and he went to work and worked his whole shift and left the baby in the car.
Okay. And do you remember any other details about what he was doing that day, where he worked, where he had gone, anything of that nature? Any other facts that you can remember about the case whatsoever, other than he went to work and left his child in the car, and then found him at the end, or however the baby was found at the end of the day?
No, it wasn't a story that I actually followed up on. I just seen it on the news that time and on Facebook and read the article that one time.
Okay. Now, I think you also stated that your family members or friends may have expressed opinions about the case or said some stuff about the case. Okay, tell me a little about that. You don't have to, dime people out and tell who it was, but what did family members tell you, or what opinions were shared with you?
A family member was the one who posted it.
Oh, okay. All right.
And she expressed her opinion.
Okay. And what was her opinion?
Like, do I say what she said? Or,
Well, if you don't say it now, the defense is going to ask you. So, go ahead and tell us
so
what.
it's pretty much like he needs to run into.
Okay. And so, again, that opinion from this was it a family member?
Yeah.
Okay, would you take that into consideration if you were selected as a juror? Would you be able to put that aside? Just a second, Your Honor. Nothing else, Judge.
For the defense,
Okay, so one of your family members posted something on Facebook, and you said that, what, to the best of your recollection, what was posted was that someone forgot their baby in the car, and the baby died. Okay, and you don't recall any of the details? Okay. You said you did not follow the story, but you do remember that this was back when it first happened 2 years ago? Okay. Does that seem about right? About 2 years ago? Okay. And the family member, who was that? Was your mom? Okay. And basically, she, when she posted this, she said he needs to rot in, I didn't hear if you said jail or hell. In jail. Okay. And have you and your mom discussed this case over the last 2 years at all? Mm-hmm. Okay. And does she know that you've been selected to be questioned to be on this? Oh, she doesn't know. Okay. Are you?
She doesn't live out here. I don't have any family in Georgia.
Okay.
She's up north, so she doesn't really know how to do it.
And when we questioned you earlier, you indicated that this wasn't the only story, that this wasn't the only encounter story of a child left in a car that you've heard. You've heard other stories? Do you remember when that was?
I don't remember when it was, but I remember an incident in Pennsylvania when I was living in Maryland.
Okay,
When it was 2 kids that was left in the car.
okay.
And they both had passed away.
Did you follow that case at all? All right. All right. What about since then? Have you heard any accounts since then, since you've been living in Georgia? No? Okay. All right, I want to clarify the answer that you gave regarding whether you'd formed and expressed an opinion. The judge asked you that yesterday. You raised your hand, indicated that you had. And then Mr. Boring asked you about that, and I'm not real clear if I understood what your opinion was. When the judge asked you, have you formed and expressed an opinion, regarding this case, what?
I was against it at first. Like I said, I prejudged them.
Okay,
I don't know the evidence. I haven't heard anything about the case except what was said on the news and what was on Facebook in the article. But I did prejudge, and I pretty much said, yeah, he should be good.
You should.
He's good.
all right. You sort of trailed off at the end there. I'm sorry. I know the court reporter had difficulty hearing you, and I heard he's guilty. What was the complete sentence?
That's what I said.
Your opinion is that he's guilty. Right? Your opinion right now is that he's guilty.
No, I'm saying that I had prejudged him ahead of time when I first seen the article.
Okay.
I prejudged, I
All right, so what you're telling us is that that was your opinion. That was your initial reaction.
Right, when I first,
When you first heard about it, you immediately had an opinion that he's guilty, how could somebody do that?
right,
And what you're telling us now is that that's not necessarily your opinion anymore.
I feel like now, as I was, like, as I'm experiencing it, I'm like, the more of the open mind, like, well, I really didn't see the evidence, I don't know the details of the case, I don't know what he was doing at the time, you know, so, I'm more open,
You're more open now.
right.
Okay, so the fact that you you shared with us honestly that you had that opinion,
Right,
so we're all clear. You're saying that's not your opinion now.
right,
You're open to consider the evidence
yeah,
for both sides.
for both sides,
Okay, so you think you can be a fair and impartial juror?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'm going to excuse you. I want you back here October 3rd, 9 a.m., jury assembly room. Keep an open mind. Don't discuss this matter with anyone else, including other jurors. Don't let anyone speak to you about the case. No contact with attorneys, witnesses, parties to the case. And I want you to create an impenetrable barrier between you and anything to do with this case. Facebook, Google, internet searches, family and friends, absolutely, media, radio, whatever. You are to let nothing come across your radar screen that has anything to do with this case, okay? All right. And I'll excuse you. See you on October 3rd, 9 a.m. And Mr. Chestnut will help you out, and he'll bring the next juror, which is gonna be juror 11. No, yeah, it is juror 11.
Judge, this is a juror who actually
Has surgery.
we may be able to address it, just ask questions about that first.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. You provided me with a tissue in case I start sobbing? Or you heard me coughing on it?
I think we've had people coughing and sneezing and such.
Okay.
Maybe you've heard me coughing throughout this and it's annoyed you too.
I
So.
bought some more cough drops
Okay.
at lunchtime.
Right. Okay. Juror 11, we brought you back to discuss a couple of issues. First thing to take up, I know you talked about a couple of things that you have coming up as far as medical appointments.
Yes.
Okay. So the first date was the 26th and 27th of September, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so if we can accommodate you going to those appointments, would that basically do away with any conflict as far as September?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the 10th, October 10th and October 11th, I believe you stated that the appointments and the follow-up on those days are partial days?
Well, no.
Okay.
They do the left eye on the 26th, and then the 27th is the the post-op procedures.
Okay.
Then on the 10th, they do the right eye,
Okay.
and the 11th then is the post-op procedures on that eye. Then I should be able to see all of you.
Okay. Up until that point, can you still see us to some degree?
Not well.
It's probably good for you in my case.
Yeah,
So.
I was gonna say, if any of you were in a lineup.
Okay. All right. The procedure on the 10th. Up until that point, if you have exhibits and things like that, are you going to be able to see them in court?
I believe so.
Okay. Now.
Can they, if I request that they be brought closer,
Mm-hmm.
is that?
We can take that up. We can
Okay.
figure that up. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not blind, I just,
yes.
Everything's kind of blurry.
Okay. And you said.
Someday you're going to have to deal with this situation.
Did you see the first day when I realized I didn't have my glasses? It's already taken place here. So, and you seem like you wouldn't have a problem anyway. You don't have a problem telling us if you can't see something or.
Correct.
Okay. Now, going to your appointment on the 10th and then the 11th.
Yes.
Your doctor's appointment on the 10th, do you have a time set yet?
No, actually, there's the day set,
Mhm.
but the surgery center calls me for the time.
Okay.
They do several a day, and I get in a particular slot.
Okay.
And they call me the Friday before.
Okay. If you were, if you had an appointment that day after the actual surgery, let's say, just hypothetically, I hate to throw hypotheticals out, but let's say it's like 9 a.m. How long is the surgery? And then just after the surgery, would you be able to come in later that day?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Not from what they've told me.
Okay. So that would be, I guess, a full day.
I have the eye is
Mhm.
covered. I am under, I've had anesthesia. I cannot drive.
Okay. All right. And the next day,
I could come in partial day.
partial day. So it'd be about a day and a half.
Yes.
Okay. Judge, I'll reserve on that and see if Mr. Kilgore has any questions in that regard.
I don't. I think he's covered what we need to know.
Do you all wanna,
Yeah.
yeah,
Please.
well, what did y'all talk to each other and see if you agree or not? That's what we've done in the past.
I think it's a medical excuse.
I don't think we can afford to lose it. And I don't think we can afford to lose it. Oops, sorry.
Let's do this.
We're gonna agree.
She's dead set. Do you all agree?
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, good luck with your surgeries. If you'll step through the door, Mr. Sharon's gonna give you your next directions.
Okay.
Thank you very, very much. And we'll need a minute, Mr. Chestnut, we'll need a minute before you bring the next juror. All right, let's build the record.
Your Honor, I think Mr. Kilgore and I have reached an agreement after having the juror tell us exactly how long she was going to be out. At a minimum, it's going to be a day and a half, and I'm kind of hesitant as to whether it may be more, and I don't think at this point it would be wise to waste a day and a half for when we have several jurors we could question.
No, I think probably it would be, it might be 2 days, but it wouldn't be more than that, but I agree with that, that we need to spend every minute we can on this trial. Mr. Kilgore, was that your opinion?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I've had her excused for medical cause. We can have juror 12. Are we gonna do what we did the first time after we go through 12, y'all confer?
That would be the state's preference.
Think about it and see if you agree. Come on in, come all the way down, and you can have that second to the end seat. Hope you had a good lunch and we're ready to pick back up. Or we will be.
Good afternoon. Okay, I think we've got 2 issues to talk to you about, and they kind of relate to the same thing. Everybody was asked early on if you've heard about the case, either from the news or family or things like that, and you raised your hand that you've heard something about this case. So first off, if you could just tell us where you heard about the case, and as far as you can remember, what you know about it, just generally, and then we'll ask you some follow-up questions.
My boyfriend's mom came in and was talking to him, and I overheard. It's not, I don't know if it's the story, but it was kind of the story / her opinion is what it was.
Okay. And when was this?
Yesterday, no, when, the day before?
Monday?
Monday's confused. Monday afternoon, yes.
Okay, was that the first day you showed up here?
Yes.
Okay. And before that, had you ever heard of this case?
No.
Okay. When you heard about it, what do you remember her saying about it?
I can tell you her exact words, I guess.
Sure, you go ahead.
Her exact words were, I don't see how anybody can leave their child in the car for 7 hours.
Okay. Now, other than that, did you hear any more details from her about the facts?
No, that's the only thing, is her opinion.
Okay. Do you sometimes disagree with your boyfriend's mom? I'm sorry, it's on the record,
Yeah.
but okay. And now, having heard her make this statement, are there any other facts that you know about this case from any source?
No.
Okay. Is there any effect that her saying that, would that have any effect on your ability to be a juror in this case and be fair and impartial to both sides?
No.
Okay. Would you in any way take her opinion into the jury room and think, hey, you know, okay. And when you raise your hand saying, when Mr. Kilgore, I think, asked you, have any family members or friends that expressed an opinion, is that what you were talking about? All right. Second, Your Honor. That's all I have, Judge.
From the defense?
Well, this might be a little delicate, but you've told us who you heard this opinion from, but obviously we don't know her or know anything about her, so don't tell me her name.
Okay.
But who is she?
She is a realtor at Days Island,
Uh-huh.
is that what you're looking for?
Yeah.
I don't really know here. She's a,
Here in St. Simon's area?
she lives in Brunswick.
Okay.
She's divorced, she's a single mom,
Okay.
and she only has one son.
Okay. And do you live in her house?
I stay there more days out of the week.
Okay. You're a partial resident of her house. Okay. And I mean, does she have some or any influence on what you do and where you go and not? You pay rent there?
Huh?
You don't pay rent there, do you? Okay. And did you, or rather, do you know at the time that she was saying this, did she know that you were going to be possibly questioned about being a juror in the case?
She knew I had jury duty.
Mm-hmm.
For what case she did not know. I guess she had just heard this on the news and just came in talking to me and her son and just randomly blurted it out.
Okay.
I had no feedback on it. I just shook my head. And
Okay. All right. And best of your recollection, that's the only time that you've ever heard anybody express an opinion on the case.
Yes.
Okay. And you would have been living, I guess, in this area in the summer of 2014. So you weren't living in Atlanta to be exposed to whatever was on TV there. And you don't remember seeing any posts on Facebook or anything like that?
Not that I can remember.
Okay. Did when you saw Mr. Harris when you came in the courtroom, was that the first time you'd ever seen him, or had you ever seen him on TV
No, I haven't seen it.
or in the newspaper?
I don't really watch the news or the newspaper.
Okay. You get most of your news from social media?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything that we have not asked you about that you think you should tell us that would have any bearing on whether or not you could be a fair and impartial juror for this particular case?
No, I don't think
But you think you could be a fair and impartial juror? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Are we done? Next day, we'll see you, October 3rd, 9 a.m. jury assembly room for jury selection. Keep an open mind. Do not discuss this matter with anyone else or other jurors, and don't let anyone discuss it with you whatsoever. And if they start talking about it, leave the room. Do la 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 la. I can't hear that. No contact with attorneys, parties, or witnesses to the case, and likewise with any other source of information, radio, TV, Google, Facebook, anything else you could even conceivably think of. Don't do that. Stay neutral and go into a zone where you have no exposure to this case whatsoever. We'll see you October 3rd, 9 a.m. Thank you all.
The panel two's what, they're ready to go when you are.
We're not,
Very good.
but we will be.
Thank you.
It's simply a matter of time.
All right.
All right. What we've done in the past that I thought was effective and efficient was take recess, let you all discuss and see if you got agreement or disagreement on, out of this group on cause, and if there are challenges, take them now and hear the argument, make rulings. Does the state agree or not?
Yes, Judge, the state agrees.
What does the defense say?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, let's recess till, I want to give you all a break too, because when we go into panel, we're going to go into the second 12 of this first panel, so we'll be doing 13 to 24 this afternoon, and when we go into them, I want to keep working until it's around 5. So I want y'all to have your afternoon break as well. Do you think you could be ready to go 50 at about a quarter till?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yeah, I think y'all should be able to confer and maybe have agreements and disagreements in about 5 or so minutes. That's just my humble opinion. And then you can take a little break. All right, we'll be in recess until a quarter till. All right. We'll need to wait for the defendant. Who will make the statement to the court as to agreement and disagreement? Will you, Mr. Warren?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, and you've conferred with Mr. Kilgore, and y'all have agreements and disagreements, whatever, like we did in the past?
Yes, Your Honor.
I'm ready when you are. Will you start with each juror and go 1 through whatever?
Okay.
Well, obviously 1 through 12.
Okay, Juror 1, Judge, the defense has a motion for cause. The state does not agree, so we'll need to be heard on that one.
All right, hang on a minute. Juror 2.
There is no motion for cause on either side.
So she's fine with both well, that's fine. She'll be part of the pool.
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror 3.
That is an agreed upon cause motion by the defense and state.
Okay, cause by consent, let's
Yes,
say.
Your Honor.
Juror 4.
Juror 4, there is no motion for either side.
Juror 5.
Juror 5, there is no motion from either side.
Juror 6 has been struck for cause.
Yes, Your Honor.
Bear with me. Juror 7.
There is no motion to strike, Judge.
Juror 8.
Your Honor, that is a consent motion to strike.
Okay, Juror 8. Juror 9.
That is a consent of the parties to strike the cause.
Juror 10.
There is no motion from either party.
Juror 11, we excused for medical.
Correct, Judge.
Juror 12.
There is no motion from either party.
I'll hear this defense's motion to strike Juror 1 for cause.
On the statutory question to Mr. E.J. Juror 1, question 1, if they formed and expressed an opinion, he answered the court in the affirmative that he had formed and expressed an opinion. And when he was asked by the state about that, what he said was that he probably did something, so he's not innocent. Of course, we both questioned him about that, and he reaffirmed that that was in fact his opinion, that he probably did something, so he's not innocent. Well, he's not innocent. Obviously, it's that he's guilty. I'll be honest with you, Judge. I'm troubled with a juror who wants to play semantics with us about something as significant and important as what we're doing here. And that's all that is. That's semantic gamesmanship here. He doesn't want to just say the words, I think he's guilty. But it doesn't take very high intellect to know very well that that's exactly what he was saying, and that's exactly what he meant. What he told us was that he agreed that he had that opinion. He said it was fair to say that he'd had that opinion for at least a year. He agreed that he had expressed that opinion to his wife. And he told us about hearing the charges, and that the number of charges solidified. He acknowledged that solidified by hearing what he called long list of charges. And I believe what his words were something to the extent of, something to the effect of that the long list of charges essentially proved that he was correct in what his opinion was that Mr. Harris is not innocent. Now, when the state questioned him, they propounded a leading question, the magic question. What they ask is if he could set his opinion aside and render a verdict on the evidence. And he gave a one-word answer, and that answer was yes. But when I questioned him, he again acknowledged that he could decide on the evidence, but in regards to his opinion, he said that never changes. He essentially said, I'm still going to have that opinion, and I believe specifically his words were, that opinion never changes. I think it was clear certainly to me and everybody in the court, his tone and general manner was, we've experienced an awful lot of very friendly folk down here in Glenn County. Everybody we've come across has been very pleasant and very friendly, and he was not happy. I think it was very clear he was not happy. And in fact, several times he used the phrase, when y'all got to town. When y'all got to town. And quite frankly, it came across in a very offensive way. And so I think the totality of acknowledging that he's formed an opinion, that clearly that opinion was guilt. He made it real clear that opinion's not going to change. Now, yes, I'll decide on the evidence, but I'm still going to have my opinion. I think that given the, 200, 250 folks we got to question, I think it's certainly reasonable that this particular juror be excused for cause. I just don't think he's an appropriate juror for this case.
Your Honor, I think it was very clear that juror number 1 is qualified. First of all, just as far as him using the term, when y'all came to town, I think it was clear he was using that as a line of demarcation about when things occurred. And personally, I didn't take anything offensively. I think most people in here would have when he said, when y'all came to town. Of course, that's when he found out there was a change of venue and things of that nature. As far as the statute, or the question being offered by the state to juror 1, I think the record will accurately reflect what I said. It was not a leading question. A leading question, as you know, would have been, you would be able to be fair and impartial, wouldn't you? And you would be able to do this. That's not how it was phrased. It was phrased, would you be able to? That doesn't suggest an answer one way or another. That is basic leading or non-leading questions. It was not the type of question that's been criticized. And he answered, I would put that aside. Later, was asked several times by the defense, and he said no. He was corrected. Mr. Kilgore was several times when the juror said, no, I'm going to decide this case based on the evidence in this case and the law. When he asked him about his opinion and said, so your opinion is guilty, the juror actually corrected Mr. Kilgore. He said, no, I'm not saying he's guilty. I'm just saying I don't think he's innocent. That's my opinion. Your Honor, I've heard many a skilled attorney fight semantics on this and say, even if you think that they're not exactly innocent, that doesn't mean they're guilty. So I think that's kind of using that the same way. He never said he has an opinion that the defendant is guilty. He also, when asked if he would apply the legal presumption, the legal standard, when you told him what presumption of innocence means, he said, absolutely, I will follow that law that Your Honor is going to give. Several times, I think he was asked, and I think Mr. Kilgore did just state that he had said he had an opinion of guilt. He never said that once. So I think this juror was very clear in saying that he would follow the trial testimony, would follow the law of the court, and had no problem setting it aside to render a verdict just based upon that in this case, and not any opinions that he had leading up to the case. And I think just also to again, have it in the record, he knew very little about this case as far as what was in the media and things like that, compared to some of the other jurors who were, I think, consented to as far as strikes for cause based upon how their opinion is formed and things like that, and how their opinion was fixed indefinitely.
Do you have further argument?
Yeah, I'm glad Mr. Bory brought that to the court's attention, because I think that is particularly problematic in the fact that he, according to him, he really knew absolutely nothing about the case. A child died in someone's back seat, and he knew something about somebody working at Home Depot. But he didn't even know the familial relationship between Mr. Harris and his son. And yet, even that, he formed an opinion he'd had for a year, an opinion which he shared with his wife, an opinion which was solidified by hearing the reading of the charges before this court, and he commented, these aren't my words, these are his words, that yeah, it probably means I was right. There's no way you can cut it. He has an opinion, and it's very clear that he said that opinion never changes. When I questioned him, what's being left out here is the magic question is that if you could set the opinion aside and render a verdict on the evidence. Okay, when I questioned him, he agreed he could render a verdict on the evidence, but he expressed that his opinion never changes. So he was still going to have the opinion. So I would submit to the court that, and look, if I think it's clear that he's not qualified, but I submit to the court, even if it's close, I believe he should be struck for cause.
Well, first, the first observation I have of the juror is regarding everyone else being friendly and him not. Everyone else has been gracious in a very remarkable way. However, regarding juror number 1, I found his demeanor to probably be reflective of his personality. And not everyone got a smile all the time on their face without being neutral or welcoming or whatever. I didn't find it to be expressed toward anyone particularly, because he was consistent in his demeanor and personality, which was not inappropriate, and did not cause this court to have concerns that is a relevant issue as to this decision making. It certainly would be fine for use of a peremptory challenge, and I think the defense would be entitled to utilize it in that way. But for this court to make a decision on that with regard to this juror, I'm not going to do that, because I didn't see it that way. And that can be a matter of opinion, and opinions can be different, and who's to say? But I don't find that to be valid or relevant to this discussion. What I do find to be valid and relevant to this discussion is that he did in fact say that his opinion would never change, that he had his opinion, and that the opinion was that he's not innocent, which means that the juror cannot effectively follow the court's instructions as to presumption of innocence. And the defendant's entitled to that constitutionally. So I think there's a record that supports the finding that to a level of his ability to serve, that component would not exist. And I'm going to grant the motion to strike for cause to the defense, and I note the state's exception to the court's ruling. I believe that takes care of the first 12 of panel 1 for our inquiry at this time. Mr. Boring, do you agree or disagree with that?
I agree, Judge.
And Mr. Kilgore, do you agree or disagree with that?
Yes, ma'am.
Let's bring in the next group of 12, if they're ready. Mr. Sharon and Mr. Jackson.
Juror.
Long, yeah, long day for y'all, huh? Well, accept my apology. It's not worth a whole lot. I've been in here working, y'all been out there not. And I know that's frustrating, but we have been as diligently as we could trying to get to you all. It's just hard to gauge these things, and I do hope you're understanding. And if not, at least you're in here and we're gonna start working, and that's gonna be a big improvement. So, that part is taken care of. It's been a while since we introduced ourselves, so I think it'd be prudent to start with an introduction from both sides. Are you going to be conducting the board hour, Mr. Evans?
I am, Your Honor.
Would you introduce yourself to the jurors,
Jesse
please?
Evans, I'm with the Cobb County District Attorney's Office, and I'll let my team introduce themselves as well.
Chuck Bourne again, DA's office.
Good afternoon, Susan Treadaway from the Cobb County District Attorney's Office.
And for the defense.
Hey, I'm Maddox Gilmore, and I represent Ross, and this is Brian Lumpkin and Carlos Rodriguez.
And I guess I should remind you that I'm Mary Staley Clark, Judge of the Superior Court of Cobb County. Now, we're going to start asking questions of you. First, they're going to ask you questions of the group. They're called general questions. Given the hour, that's probably as much as we'll accomplish today, and probably not all of it, but a good shot at it, shall we say.
As a reminder, Judge, we've done general
You've done general, it's individual now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. They're going to begin individuals now, and it'll be state last, and then the defense will follow up. Remember, you're under oath. It's your duty to fully answer these questions. It's better to give too much information than not enough. If we get into areas that you consider to be personal, just tell the lawyer that. Say, I have an answer to that, I consider it personal, and we'll create as private an environment for you as possible to accomplish our task of gathering this information, but giving you some privacy, some measure of a bit more comfort. Language is interesting. It may well be that people use a phrase or a term or a word that isn't part of what you normally would use. There's nothing wrong with that. Human communication is important. It's important that you understand what they have to say to you, and it's important that they understand what you have to say to them. So, if we start using, and we're lawyers, so everybody knows about lawyers, we use words that people haven't used in 500 years regularly. Usually in law, you're going to find at least 3 words for one thing, generally English, French, and probably something Latin. So, seriously, if we're using terms you don't understand or don't use commonly, ask. There's no bad question, except the one that's not asked when you need it. And I promise you, if we're not quite following, we're going to be asking you all for a little follow-up as well. And I think that covers it. So I'm going to let the state start, then the defense.
Thank you, Judge. So we're in sort of the second phase, maybe even the third phase if you want to count day one, the introductions and taking the oaths and things. Second phase was us asking you those general questions, and my partner over here, Mr. Boring, asked those questions, a member of each of the panel, and you would be panel number 2 in our minds. And then the third phase, which I'll call this phase, is individual questions. We're just going to start kind of down the row. And what we have is no secret. We've made a little list of people who had affirmative responses to our general questions. And we just need to go one by one and kind of follow up on those. And we've been told by the judge that probably will go till about 5 today, so we'll just see kind of how far we get, and then kind of do some follow-up there. And I want to echo with the court, so there's no wrong answer. other than one that you're holding in because you're afraid to say it. We'd rather you say it than not. So please, if you don't understand something, then stop me and ask me, and we'll get down to it. The other thing I want to remind you is that we're using numbers. We're doing that for a purpose. There is a camera in the courtroom. I think everybody can see that. They're not filming you. The judge has already told you that and instructed them not to do that. But we are trying to the best we're able to refer to jurors to respect their privacy. So I'm going to be referring to you probably by number or initials, and hopefully I won't mess that up and forget, okay? So starting with you, man, I'm going to refer to you as juror number 13 because you're our 13th prospective juror. And I'm not doing that because I'm meaning to be disrespectful or anything in the least. I'm actually quite the opposite, trying to be more respectful of your privacy. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. So you all just kind of pay attention. You'll see how this works because it's going to be very similar questions to many of you. But we're going to start with you, juror number 13. And I just want to go into some of the responses that you gave us, okay? I understand that you are you're a nurse, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. And do you work in a hospital?
not at this time, no.
Okay. Where do you work?
I work with visiting angels, traveling supervisor.
That's right. And you mentioned that the other day. Okay. And is there a particular class of persons that you care for? In other words, elder,
At this specific time, it's
elderly. And how long you been doing that?
working with this particular company about 2 years.
Okay. Have you ever worked with children as a nurse?
Yes, sir, I have.
And how long and when did you do that?
I worked with children about 8 years,
Okay.
and that was in about 1999. It was the last year.
Okay. So it's been a little while since you worked with kids at all. And did you go straight into visiting angels from there, or did you have other nursing jobs before that?
No, sir, I had other nursing jobs before that and after that
Okay. All right. So you've been doing this for some time now.
for 33 years.
33 years. All right. Well, we certainly appreciate your service. You also indicated that your husband, he's retired. Is that correct?
He was retired, heating and air conditioning. He has since been disabled.
Okay. All right. Let's talk a little bit about some of the general questions that were posed to you. One of the first questions we asked was about whether you've had any management experience. Do you remember that? The ability to hire or fire anyone or do anything like that? And you rose your hand and said you had some management experience.
I do have management experience.
Can you tell me a little bit about that, please?
Well, right now, I'm in management because I'm the traveling supervisor for the area.
And how
So
many?
I go out and I see patients and I make determination if there's somebody we want to take care of, and then we bring it all together. We bring it as a group.
I see.
And we make the decisions.
Right, but you're sort of in charge of this group.
Yes, sir.
And how big a group is it?
It's, right now it's 6 people,
6 people. And how long you been in management of these 6 people?
about 2 years.
And I assume as a manager, obviously, you got different responsibilities than if you were just an employee. You've got added duties
Yes.
other than just nursing.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You also indicated that you have some military background in your family.
Yes, sir.
Can you please tell me a little bit about that?
I have 2 brothers that were Marines. I have a father that was Navy, and I have a brother that was Army.
Sounds like military is pretty big in your family.
Yes, sir.
We found a lot of that in this area. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone in this room. Okay. I have down here as well, there was a series of questions that we asked about child protective services, or what we sometimes refer to as DFACS here. Do you remember those series of questions?
Yes, sir.
And you raised your hand for at least one of those questions. Can you tell me a little bit about your situation and why you raised your hand for that question?
Well, I have 2 grandkids that came to live with me through DFAC.
Okay.
So they live with me at the present time. And I am a foster parent through the state of Georgia.
Okay. All right, so you in addition to this DFAC situation where you're caring for your own grandchildren, you've taken affirmative steps to be able to be a foster parent too.
To other people, yes.
Okay, and I know some foster parents end up adopting, other foster parents just take kids in for a period of time and then they sort of move on.
Yes, sir.
Which of those classes do you fall in?
Well, I took them in until their parent got able to take care of them.
Okay. I'm sure that can be a difficult job at times. Yeah. And I think you've already answered this question to my satisfaction, but I'm going to ask the question because I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. When you raised your hand about having a medical background, we've covered a lot of your medical background already. Was there somebody else in your family that also has a medical background? Your mother? So, was she a nurse as well?
She was RN.
Okay. And did she do similar type work to what you've done?
She was hospital.
Okay. So you're kind of following mom's footsteps in.
Yes, sir.
Oh, wait. And then one of the other questions, sticking kind of with this category of classes of people that we wanted to find out about. One of the class of persons that we wanted to ask you about was IT type people, people that work in information technology or with computers and stuff, which is not my forte. But you got somebody that you thought of?
Yes, sir. My daughter, my oldest daughter.
And what does she do?
She's an ITT specialist traveling for the government.
Oh, for the government?
Yes.
For military or other part of the government?
Federal, not military.
Okay. How long has she been doing that?
20 years.
All right. Well, she must like it.
She loves it.
Probably love the federal benefits too. I hear they're pretty good.
Yes, sir.
The licensing question, I'm pretty sure I know the answer to that. I mean, you've got to be a licensed nurse to be able
Yes,
to.
sir, yeah.
Okay. And was there any other license that you held besides your nursing license when you raised your hand for that one?
No, sir.
Okay. You were one of our prospective jurors that indicated that you had either prior jury or prior grand jury service. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Was your prior jury service here in Glenn County or elsewhere?
No, sir, Washington, D.C.
And how long did you live in Washington, D.C.?
15 years?
Okay. Was it just one time?
No, it's been about 4 times.
Yeah, jury, you're fortunate to go through this process. This is your 5th time going through the
Yes,
process?
sir.
Okay. All right. I need to, let's talk about the 4 cases. First of all, this is obviously a criminal case. They also have civil cases. And you could be a juror on either one. I'm sure you probably know that.
Yes, sir.
For your 4 cases, were they all criminal or were some of them civil?
1 grand, 1 civil, and 2 criminal.
Okay, so 1 grand jury, civil,
And 2 criminal.
okay, 2 criminal. All right, let's talk about the grand jury experience first. So grand jury, every county's a little bit, or every circuit's a little bit different. But in Cobb, for example, if you were on a grand jury, you'd have to come every Thursday and listen to a bunch of cases. It's not just one case. Is that similar to what you did? Maybe the dates were different, but
I did on Tuesdays.
yours on Tuesdays. Okay, but you did that maybe for a month or so. Or,
Yes, sir.
okay. How'd you enjoy that experience?
It was okay. It
Oh.
was good.
Okay.
It was good.
Is there anything, you kind of see a theme here to the follow-up to the, is there anything about that experience that you think would in any way negatively impact your ability to be a fair juror if you were selected for this case?
No, sir.
Okay. Let's talk about the civil case next. You were actually seated as a juror on that case.
Yes, sir.
Do you remember what kind of case it was, what the subject matter was?
No, somebody was suing.
Okay.
Somebody.
Do you know, did you reach a verdict in the case? Don't tell me what it was, but did you reach a verdict?
Yes, sir.
And were you by chance the 4-person?
No, sir.
Let's talk about the 2 criminal cases. Do you remember what the charges were in each of the cases? Like what type of case it was?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's talk about the first one that comes to your mind. Well, what was that one?
That was somebody with a gun holding up somebody.
Okay, like an armed robbery case. All right. Now, again, don't tell me what the verdict was, but can you tell me, did you reach a verdict in the case?
Yes, sir, we did.
And were you by chance the 4-person on that case?
Yes, sir, I was.
You were 4-person there. So you were actually in charge of the jury and kind of guiding the deliberations.
Yes, sir.
We don't get a lot of people. We get a lot of people that have been on jurors, but it's kind of touch and go that you get one of the 12 that actually was the 4-person. So that means they all elected you and said, "We think you'd be a good 4-person."
Yes, sir.
Okay. And how did you enjoy that experience? Just focusing on the armed robbery case.
It was pretty good.
Anything about that would impact your ability to be a fair juror in this
No,
case?
sir.
And then the last criminal case that you were involved in. Tell me what the nature of that case was. Like what kind of charge?
It was murder.
Murder. And again, without telling me what it was, can you tell me whether you reached a verdict?
Yes, sir, we did.
And were you by chance the 4-person there?
No, sir.
and tell me a little bit about that experience. How was it?
It was okay. It was
Okay.
okay.
Doesn't sound as resounding as some of the other ones. Was that a little bit more difficult to do than some of the other cases that you were involved in?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there anything about that that would lead you to believe in this case that you would not be able to be a fair and impartial juror?
No, sir.
You've had a lot of experience in jury, sir. Tell me about church. You indicated that you regularly go to church or are a member.
Yes, sir.
Can you identify which church?
I go to First African Baptist Church.
First African Baptist?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is that a pretty big church?
Yeah, it's a pretty big church.
Okay. There was a series of questions about technology. Do you remember a bunch of those questions that Mr. Boring asked? And we wanted to talk about specific applications and things like that. And if I have my notes correct, and you should all feel free to correct me if my notes are not accurate because we're doing it really fast. But if my notes are correct, you do some messaging. You're familiar with that and do some of that. Is that correct? Like text messaging?
Very little.
Okay.
Very little.
That was my follow-up question. I didn't have you down for any of the other ones like Twitter or Instagram or so what messaging were you referring to?
I do Facebook.
Facebook. What about texting? Do you text at all?
I do text.
Any other way that you communicate?
No, sir.
Okay. There was a question about legal interests, and you indicated that you do have some legal interests, and we broke it up. You could either have fiction or you could have nonfiction legal interests. And I'm trying to remember whether you raised your hand for one or both of those. Remember? Okay, you don't have any legal interests such as watching TV shows or anything?
Oh, yeah, SUV, Law and Order SUV.
Okay. They got so many of those Law and Orders now that they just add a new title to the end of it. So you watch that fairly regularly? Okay. And is that the only show, the fiction show?
That's it.
All right.
That's the only one
We always ask our prospective jurors, especially those that like the fiction shows, sometimes they come in and they say, well, I think that's really how things are on TV. You've now been in this part of this process probably more than some of the people in this room. You know that's not really the way it works. Okay. So you're not going to hold us to those heightened expectations of doing it just like they do perfectly on SVU from a script.
No, sir.
Okay. One of the questions that was posed to you is, have anyone here ever followed a trial? And you, like many of your peer jurors, indicated that you had followed at least one trial. Okay, what trial was that you were thinking of?
My brother got killed.
Okay, I'm sorry to hear that. Where did that happen?
Washington, D.C.
How long ago?
30 years.
All right. And did you actually go to court and attend the trial?
Yeah.
I certainly don't want to, prior get into that situation or anything like that. But, as a juror in this case, we want jurors to come in and be able to judge this case on the facts of this case, not on anything else. The fact that this unfortunate circumstance was inflicted on your family, is that in any way going to impact your ability to be fair? Can you separate that?
Oh, I can separate that.
Okay. Was the person that did that, was it held accountable in that case?
Yes, sir.
Were you satisfied with how that case was handled within the criminal justice system?
Yes, sir.
I think I know the answer to this. One of the questions is about, hey, are you a caretaker? And we've already talked about a bunch of them. On one sense, you're a caretaker every day as a nurse.
Yes, sir.
On the other sense, you've already told us about your personal situation as well, where you've got the grandkids in the foster care. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Is there anything else that you were thinking outside of what we already talked about when we talked about caretaker? Or is that kind of what prompted you? And then tell me about volunteering with kids, doing some volunteer work.
I was a volunteer at the Hospital for Sick Children in Washington, D.C.
What'd you do?
Go around helping them eat and walking them outside and stuff like that.
Okay. It sounds like you really like kids a lot.
Oh, I do.
Okay. And then you also did some paid work with kids Is that something in addition to your nursing that you did with children?
That's with nursing.
Just through nursing. There's a couple of questions that are very similar to each other that were posed to you in general questions. One was, have you had any positive experiences with law enforcement? And have you had any positive experiences with the DA's office? I suspect I know the answer, but I want to hear it from you.
Yeah, I had positive experience.
Was that your brother's situation?
Law enforcement and positive experience with the DA office. Well, when my grandkids, when they went through foster care, I had to fight to get them back.
Okay.
And I had a lawyer in Washington, D.C., and she reached out to me through Georgia, in Georgia. So she went to court for me every day, where his lawyers was doing this case for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
It took her 1 year to get him down here to me.
Okay. I got it. So that was a positive experience with the criminal justice system for you.
Yes, sir.
And what about with law enforcement? I mean, obviously, DFACS is kind of is what we call a quasi-law enforcement because they've got investigators and stuff. Were you referring to that or something else when you raised your hand?
No, yeah, I was referring to something else.
Tell me about that then.
Well, I was at a stop sign, or I was supposed to stop. You know, it's one of the California stops.
Mm-hmm.
The police stopped me. But he said, I'm just gonna give you a warning today, ma'am. That's it. I'm just gonna give you a warning. I said, okay.
When did that happen?
That happened about 2 months ago.
Okay, so that's recent in your memory, huh?
Yes, sir.
Well, I would say not paying a fine for going through a stop sign is probably a positive experience. I'll put that on my list too. How about that? Anything else you were thinking about when we were asking those series of questions about positive and negative experiences? And then tell me, there was a question, again, we don't mean to pry or anything like that, but we needed to know, is there anyone here that knows anyone, including yourself, who may have been arrested in the past or charged with something or investigated for something?
Well, my daughter,
Okay. Tell me about that.
well, when DFACS came to get the kids, she wanted to fight the police and fight the DFACS, so they locked her up.
I got you. An obstruction kind of situation?
She said, what?
Well, did she obstruct the police or fight with the police?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else you're thinking of for that question?
No, sir.
And what about having testified before? Was one question about, have you ever had to come to court and testify before?
No, I had to testify in her case.
Okay. That's the DFACS situation that we've talked about. All right. And tell me about having to give a statement to law enforcement in the past. You raised your hand for that question as well.
Well, I had, in that case.
Okay. Sounds like a lot of your responses kind of revolve around the unfortunate family situation. Again, I think we've got to answer this. So if we've already covered it, we'll just move right through it. One of the questions, or a couple of questions, focus on, do you know anyone that's been investigated for child neglect or child abuse or anything like that? And you raised your hand on that one.
Yes,
So,
my daughter's boyfriend at the time.
and you were one of the few jurors that raised your hand for knowing somebody that was involved in a homicide.
Yes.
Okay. And I know about your brother's situation. Anything else other than what we've already talked about there?
No, that's it.
And then transporting children. You've done that, sounds like, for a good portion of your life.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And how old are your grandkids?
Well, the ones that live with me is 2, 13, and 15.
2, 13, 15. All right. So obviously, 13, 15-year-old, they can just use seatbelts. But for the 2-year-old, probably, in that area where you need at least a booster.
I have a car seat.
You got a car seat. Good.
Yeah.
Okay. So you know what the rules are and what you're supposed to do in terms of having car seat versus booster and all that kind of thing. Who do you know that's been divorced?
I've been divorced.
Okay. So your husband, disabled husband, who'd worked at HVAC, this is your second husband.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then going now, I think I got most of my questions answered from our general questions. I do want to ask you a little bit about some of the defense questions. One of the questions they asked you is, have you ever gone to court and contested a ticket before?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so tell me about that. Obviously, it wasn't with a warning. You didn't have to go.
I went to court to a speeding ticket.
Okay. What was the end result of that?
I just had to pay a fine, but it wasn't no points on my license.
Okay. So you went in and asked him, hey, can we bump it down a little bit or something?
Yes. But he went in, and when he finished talking to me and found out the circumstances, he bumped it down.
Okay. There was also a question posed about law enforcement and whether you ever had like an unfair experience with them, where maybe you thought that there was something misleading going on or something like that. Did you raise your hand to that? Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me about that situation and what you're thinking of?
Well, in one of my jury cases,
Okay.
one of the law enforcement, he had 2 and 3 different answers to the same question.
Okay.
He was doing a little bit too much moving around in the seat.
Okay. So this is one of your experiences that you had during one of the jury trials.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then another one of the questions asked, have you ever known somebody to be in shock? Is that part of your work as a nurse?
Yes, sir.
And then finally, I had a note here that you have had kids, maybe your grandkids, that sometimes fall asleep in the car. Who were you thinking of when you raised your hand on it?
My grandbaby was in the car seat.
Okay. All right, just 1 minute. Okay. Thank you, ma'am. I think that's all I have.
Hey, good afternoon. I'm doing okay. I'm sorry y'all had to wait a little bit, but the good news is we're getting to you today. So I am going to follow up on several things, and I want to start with the foster parent. To be a foster parent, just about anywhere, you have to take a class and get some sort of certificate or certification. So, do you have a certification here in Georgia to be a foster parent?
Yes, sir, I do.
Right? Did you have one in DC?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. That's just something that's just part of your makeup then. That's just
Yes, sir.
what you do. Okay. How many children do you typically take in through foster care at a time?
Well, right now, I had my 2 granddaughters who have since been, they're not in through the system anymore because I took them in. And then I had one kid down here and 1 kid up here.
Okay.
in DC.
All right. So, just to make sure I understand, you took 2 of your grandchildren in through the foster system.
Yes, sir.
All right. Is that the 13 and 15-year-old?
Yes, sir.
They're still with you.
Yes, sir.
How long have you had them?
I had the 15-year-old for about 4 years and the 13-year-old for 3 years, 3.5 years.
Okay. So here you are, foster parent, someone who's worked with children before, and unfortunately, your own daughter allowed, she got into a situation where foster had to step in and take her children.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then you came to the rescue.
Yes, sir.
All right. You took those kids, you've still got them, and you're raising them now as yours.
Yes, sir.
All right. And you didn't have any need to adopt them, did you?
No, sir.
All right. You've also got a 2-year-old with you.
Yes, sir.
All right. That is, excuse me. You also have a 3-year-old?
No, she'd be 3 in November.
Okay. All right. So you have a 2, almost 3-year-old.
13, almost 14, and a 15.
All right. And so the 2-year-old is your grandchild,
Yes, sir.
and does that's a granddaughter.
Yes, sir.
And does her parents live with you also?
No, sir.
They do not.
No, sir.
Okay. So you have full custody of her.
No, sir.
You do not.
Her mother is involved.
Your mother is involved.
Yeah, she just lives with me. I feel comfortable with her living with me.
Okay.
Her mother is also apparently 13, 14.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So this is the daughter who got sideways with a man up in D.C. Foster got involved. You came to the rescue. Now that daughter's living with you here.
She's not living with me here. She has her own place, but I just feel comfortable with my
She's
granddaughter
involved.
being with me.
Gotcha. Okay. She's gonna stay with you?
No, the daughter don't know.
No,
She has her own
the granddaughter's gonna stay with you.
Yeah, she gonna definitely stay with
All
me.
right. Okay. All right. I got you. We're all on the same page now. All right, so, with that understood, somebody has to keep her when you're at work.
Yes.
Is that your husband, or do you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you're not in a situation where you have to transport her back and forth to daycare?
But she do go to daycare.
Oh, she does?
Yes, she do.
Okay.
She go to daycare.
Do you take her in the mornings?
Some mornings and some mornings he takes her.
All right, so y'all have got sort of shared responsibilities in that
Yes, sir.
regard. All right, he's disabled, but he can still drive and
Still
help
drive.
out.
Yeah. No,
Okay, and obviously she's at the age where you got to have a car seat.
yeah.
Do you have one in each? Do you each have a car, or do y'all just share
No, we each have a car. We each have a car seat.
2 car seats?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Is there any sort of routine when y'all take her in the morning that you leave at a certain time, you get her there at a certain time, whichever of you takes her
No, sir. I usually text her before I go to work.
before you go to work?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is that early?
Yeah, 6:30. She can be there about 6:30.
6:30 in the morning.
Yes.
All right. And you drive from your house to the daycare, drop her off, and then you go to work.
Yes, sir.
All right. And that's kind of your routine.
That's my routine.
How far do you have to drive to where it is you drop her off?
Maybe 7 minutes.
It's very close.
Very close.
Okay. 6:30 is awfully early. Do you ever have to do any alteration of your routine in the morning, such as maybe stop to get her you a biscuit or something, or coffee, or gasoline, or the dry cleaners, or anything like that? Okay. It's always the same.
Always the same.
Straight to the daycare.
Straight to the daycare.
In the afternoons, are you also responsible for picking her up?
Normally he picks her up, but sometimes on my work schedule, I might be running a little late, so mostly he picks her up in the evening. I
Okay.
don't pick her up in the
A
evening.
good husband will do that.
Yes.
Okay. So that's kind of y'all's shared routine.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. I want to ask a little bit about. I want to ask a little bit about your jury service. And all of us have been doing this a long time, and I'll tell you, to have somebody that's been on 4 juries is, or at least 3 juries and a grand jury, is pretty remarkable. But I wasn't clear, were all of those juries when you lived in D.C.?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All of them except for this one.
Right.
The rest of them was in D.C.
Okay. All right. The jury where you served as the 4-person, the robbery case, have you got any recollection of how long ago that was? 12 years ago.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you said you also served in a murder case as well.
Yes, sir.
Do you know how long ago that was?
That was about 8 years.
All right. So that was a little more recently, before you moved down here. Okay. Why'd you move down here, by the way?
When?
Why?
Why?
Hmm?
Because my husband, he was retiring,
Okay.
and, cost of living.
Yeah. And it's a nice place.
Yeah, it's a nice place.
Okay.
And there's no traffic.
No?
And no snow. You don't have that.
That's true. No snow, no traffic, fewer politicians. So, yeah, I've spent an awful lot of time in DC, and the traffic is terrible there.
Terrible.
It is, but the trains are fantastic.
Yeah.
If you're anywhere close to walking to a train, you can get just about anywhere. Did y'all use the trains when you were up there?
I used it, but I wasn't walking.
Okay. All right. You shared with us that those were interesting experiences,
Yes, sir.
and obviously someone like you who's a professional and got a work history and has done a lot would be an appropriate person for a 4-person for a jury. But did you ask to be the 4-person, or was it kind of like by default? They just sort of looked over and said, "You're gonna do it."
And they voted it.
They voted you in.
Nobody else didn't wanna do it.
Okay, but you agreed to take on that responsibility.
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay,
And nobody else wanted to do it, so they said, "You can do it." I
Okay.
said, okay.
and you took it seriously.
And I took it seriously.
All right, all right. And and so that case was 4 years after you had been on the jury for the murder case. All right. Now, you shared with us that,
No, that was 4 years before. The murder case was 8 years ago. That one was.
I got you. Yeah, I had it backwards. Okay. So, you shared with us that in one of the cases, you were uncomfortable with some of the testimony from one of the law enforcement officers. Which case was that in? Do you remember?
That was in one of the criminal cases.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the criminal cases.
You just don't remember which one?
No.
Okay. And even though you don't remember which case it was, what has stuck with you all these years that you're sharing with us is that the officer in that case apparently was given a couple of different versions, or his testimony wasn't exactly the same. Right. And as a juror, you picked up on that.
Yes.
Right. And I take it if it stayed with you all these years, it bothered you.
Yes.
Okay. I love your phrase here. You said he was moving around in his seat a lot, or shifting around.
And, they was asking the same question in the same way,
Okay.
word in the same way,
Yeah.
so,
Was it the proverbial hot seat?
yeah,
Okay. Well, that happens, and even on SVU sometimes we see that.
yeah.
Okay. You notice there is no law and order jury selection.
Right,
Okay. This part isn't that exciting.
yeah.
Okay. You're not going to see a show about jury selection. All right. But regardless, you picked up on those. You picked up on those things from that particular witness.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And incorporated into however it was y'all went about making your decision.
Right.
All right. All right, and if chosen as a juror in this case, is there any reason to believe that you wouldn't do the same thing here? Essentially being critical and watching a witness, listening to everything they say,
Yes, sir.
and judging their credibility, whether they've got a uniform or a pair of shorts on.
True.
Okay. All right. You've got a long work history as a nurse, and if I wrote this down correctly, I think you said you worked with children specifically with children for about 6 years?
8.
For 8 years? And I'm sorry, I wasn't writing fast enough to understand exactly what that capacity was. Were you working in a children's unit in a hospital?
In the hospital, yes, sir. I was working in the hospital, in the Children's Hospital of Washington, D.C.
In a children's hospital? Okay. All right, so what I want to know is, did you have an opportunity to have a lot of interaction with the parents?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you're caring for a child, and I'm assuming this was since it was a hospital, you had rooms, and it was an inpatient facility.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So parents could come there to visit.
Yes, sir.
Was it your opinion that parents could make the difference in whether or not a child was comfortable, supported, taken care of, or not?
Yes, sir, they make a difference.
Okay.
They make a
Right.
difference.
Did you get to see all kinds of parents, those that were very supportive
And those that was not.
and those
Yes, sir.
that, well, they didn't show up?
Right.
Okay. You saw that.
Yes, sir.
And you know there's a difference between those kind of parents.
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay. All right. Facebook and texting. You keep in touch with your friends in Washington D.C. on Facebook.
Yes, sir.
All right. Unless this is too embarrassing, how many times a day do you check Facebook?
Sometimes I don't check it at all.
Oh, okay.
This week I ain't been on here at all.
All right.
Might be once a week, I get on there and check everybody, and then it might be once next week.
Okay.
I first, I don't have time.
Okay. So you've got a limited amount of time to do it, and you just sort of flip through and see if there's anything that interests you.
Right.
All right. Do you ever hit like or hit comment and then type a little, great job or love you or miss you, or do you ever do that?
Yes, sir.
You do? Okay. What about posting pictures and articles
No, sir.
yourself?
No, sir.
You don't do that part of it?
No, sir. I
Okay.
don't even know how to do it, too.
Okay. All right. You know how to flip through, comment, like,
I know how to do that because that's right down at the bottom of the screen.
right?
Pictures and, no, sir.
Okay. All right. Let's see. I think we're getting close. Let's see if there's anything else I need to ask you about. Yeah, we often ask jurors about contesting speeding tickets, really just to find out if you've ever been in a courthouse before. But you've been in a courthouse a lot
Yes, sir.
for lots of things. But this in particular, you got a ticket. You said it was only a couple of months ago,
Yes.
and you.
No, well, that was a couple of months ago when he stopped me for doing his California stop. He didn't give me a ticket at that time.
That one he did not give you a
He
ticket.
gave me a warning
Okay. When was the time you went in and contested the speeding ticket?
about 4 years ago.
Okay. And did you get to talk to the judge or just talk to the prosecutor?
I talked to the judge.
Got to talk to the judge?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did the did you disagree with what the officer's whatever his evaluation of your speed was?
I disagree with what his violation of speed was, but the judge so different, so he dropped it down, and then he just gave me a warning.
Okay.
He gave me a ticket, I had to pay a ticket,
Okay.
a fine, so there wasn't no points on my license.
Okay. And that's at the end of the day, that's
That's the big
that's
thing.
usually the most important thing on the
Right.
ticket.
Mhm.
All right. So, but you go in to see the judge. Was the officer there?
Yes, sir.
All right. And so he kind of told his version,
Yes, sir.
and you didn't necessarily agree with his version. You gave your version,
Yes, sir.
and then the judge made the decision.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you probably came out. You paid a little bit, but you came out the winner on that one. You got what you wanted,
I got what I wanted, I didn't want no points.
right? Because it makes your insurance go up.
I paid any fine, I didn't
Exactly.
want no points.
Okay. And I'm assuming it was all very pleasant, nice, and the
Yes,
officer
sir.
wasn't mad or anything like
No,
that.
it was very nice and everything, yeah.
Okay. Judge, I think I'm close here. There may be one other thing.
That's fine.
You've, as a nurse, you've obviously dealt with people who were ill or injured. You answered a question that you dealt with, you'd had reason to observe or deal with someone who was in shock or trauma or something of that nature. Is that as your work as a nurse?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you ever work in like a trauma unit,
No, sir, emergency room.
emergency room?
Yes,
All right.
sir.
So you got to see some pretty intense stuff.
Yes, sir.
All right. And not just the injured person, but perhaps sometimes the friends and family or witnesses or whoever might show up at the hospital as well.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you do that kind of work a lot over the years?